The Year of Superman. Welcome to the Krypton Report podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tyler, the Superman of Blue. With me is James, the Superman of Red Cole, right there in the corner of our Brainiac symbol. And down below, we have special guest, Mr. Case Aiken of the Men of Steel podcast. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Woo-hoo.
Hey.
All right.
How's it going?
I am doing well. I have some cool and exciting news. I can't share it at this exact moment. I will say it's super related, but I can hear soon, hopefully, in the next week. I have to wait for something to be announced first, but it's pretty cool.
Ooh, let's sneeze.
So we're going to dive into some news. Now, the first news that we have since we've recorded, because we have a different kind of schedule, is we got the 30-second Superman TV spot that everyone has complained about, the image of David Cornsweet's face. Boys, how do you feel about this image, this last shot? That's a fractal of like a second of his face flying.
Oh, I've barely registered the fact that this was in the zeitgeist. Like I saw the picture and I was just like, yeah, he looks fine. But I didn't realize that this would become like a meme level thing.
Everything's a meme level, it feels like, anymore. You can't do anything on the internet without making it a meme.
They freeze every frame, so I mean, once again, it just kind of feels like, oh well, it's a DC movie, right? So like the hate is just like it's always there every time a new DC movie is coming out.
My thing was James Gunn came out and said, we did the flying. We have wind machines. It's David's face, the type of lens that they used. He said it kind of, and I'm just like, let's just wait till we see the movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, people overreact. But it was cool because we got that shot of him flying, which we had seen part of it in the like the teaser for the teaser trailer. And then we saw a different shot of Lex Luthor. So my wife and I on Hulu have been watching The Great, that has Nicholas Hoult in it as Peter, the Emperor of Russia. And he's such a lovable douche in that. And I'm just like, I already love Nicholas Hoult as an actor, but watching that too, I'm like, I think we're in for a treat for his Lex Luthor. So
Yeah. I look forward to his portrayal of Lex Luthor, especially since we're going to have that billionaire Lex Luthor.
Now we have this coming up, gentlemen. Super Pups Unite. Watch the Puppy Bowl Sunday, February 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We will include a sneak peek of Superman. Cool.
I think that is ingenious.
Yes.
To do, rather than to do a Super Bowl commercial spot, to do a Puppy Bowl commercial spot. That is so fantastic.
Oh, they're gonna they know what they're doing. I'm gonna try to watch that. I'll probably just watch it on the internet just because my nephew has his birthday later, and I'll probably be traveling for his birthday party. But I think that's cool. This Superman action figure right here went on sale the other day at noon. By 12:19, when I was alerted to this, because I was in a meeting at work, stupid meetings at work, it had pre-sold out from every supplier.
Oh,
damn.
McFarlane, Amazon, GameStop, Target, big toy store online, and something else. Because usually if I can't do an Amazon pre-order, I do GameStop. And they were all sold out. But you know who did get one ordered? Levi. Our friend Levi, who gets every McFarlane. I think secretly he owns stock in that company. I swear.
Would be.
Okay, so let's see what other news. Oh, we have this going on. The Superman estate sues Warner Brothers Discovery, DC Comics, to push back the release of Superman in certain key areas. And I think it's pending from the Schuster side. It gets all figured out, you know.
Oh, I hadn't seen that, so I can't really like weigh in on like any like legal analysis of.
I haven't dove into it because I didn't feel like going down the rabbit hole. You know, I'm just like, figure it out, guys. Like, it's good for everybody if it makes it. Let's see what other news I have here. This is pretty cool. Superman and Lois wins a Saturn Award, the Dan Curtis Legacy Award. I did watch a little bit of Tyler Hoechlin giving the speech as they won it.
Well deserved.
That's great.
I am super excited, fellas. I didn't put my clip up here, but it was announced. One of my favorite comic conventions that every year I host a panel at, Tyler Hoechlin will be there in that Cincinnati Comic Expo. And I am pumped because I love going to that place. And I was supposed to meet him back in late February of 2020, early March. I can't remember. It was right before the shutdown because Janine and I debated it was at a Cleveland convention.
Right. Yeah, I remember you were pretty disappointed when that was canceled, when they all got canceled.
Yep. So I have, of course, I have my picture collage of all the different Superman actors I've met, but we also have like our family pictures hanging in the living room of Superman actors that we've met as a family. Gonna add Tyler to the collection this year, fellas. It's gonna be a good year. Speaking of Mr. Tyler here, this was cool. As a quote says, "I'm a huge Guardians fan, so I can't wait to see what James Gunn has done with it. David sent me a really nice note before they started shooting. He's a very, very classy guy, so I wish him and Rachel, Nick, and everybody their very best." That's how Superman actors should be. It's just nice to see the synergy here.
Yeah.
I'm glad he's looking forward to the movie, and I mean, like I said, James Gunn did a pretty good job with that sci-fi element of the Guardians and the cosmic side of Marvel over there. And from the trailers we can see, and he's talked about the Silver Age and having a really strong sci-fi element to this movie.
Let's see. We got this shot here of Peacemaker, the director's slate signed as they have. It's our first look at the new logo for season 2. What's interesting is the Dove of Peace is now like upward compared to before it was downward.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be some, symbolism in there. I was joking with Brian the other day saying I can't do anything at work unless I have the Dove of Peace on it. I was like, I can't work on my computer without the Dove of Peace. If you're a video game person, this is kind of sad. Multiverse Us Season 5 will serve as the final update for Multiversus, beginning 2/4/25 and ending 5/30/25. After Season 5 ends, players will be able to enjoy the game offline for the foreseeable future. So I'm just like, you guys just started this game like what, a year or so ago, trying to be this, free online, unique, Warner Brothers based Super Smash Brothers game, and here you are basically gonna shut it down.
Right. Shuttering it within a couple of years.
Which is just the trend in video games now. Like all of these ones that are trying to build it out as as services like have no longevity, and because they require servers to run, like it just kind of dies.
Like what sucks is my son just bought a PlayStation 5, and we were playing that because we downloaded it on there, and I found out that it's cross-platform. So like I could actually play with James the game because James is an Xbox dude.
Well, we're gonna have to play until May, man.
I know.
We're gonna have to play.
Right as we figure this out, it's like it's over.
Yep. We've got 3 more months to play it.
So, and then I saw this DC Worlds Collide is going to be a mobile app game for Android and iOS coming later this year. So you can look that up. That could be neat. You know, the kids love playing on their phones. So being Android and iOS, I can put it on their tablets. But this is kind of interesting, weird, and exciting. Okay. So DC official DC Metal Force toys. It's going to be like an online series kind of thing. There is a video you can go on. It's under Kids DC. What's interesting about this was about a year or so ago. Okay. I subscribe to Warner Brothers stuff, and I'm in some sort of like DC. I don't remember how I did it. Anyways, they sent us a link to watch an episode of this before all the art and stuff had been done, and then did a survey after it. And the kids and I watched an episode, and it was rough, you know, and they gave us a survey, and we hadn't heard anything else. And now we're seeing this, and here's some of the toys right here that's going to be available. You can see some of them on Amazon, but it's a web series.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like I said, there's a 16-minute highlight video for DC Metal Force on YouTube.
I mean, I have to admit, like young me, when I was like really into action figures, would have been super into these like concepts.
Yeah. I'm like, the kids enjoyed the episode, you know, like I always like to try to bounce stuff off them. Like, what do you feel? Because, you know, that's my gauge for a lot of things. I got 2 more little things here. One, Superman bread.
Oh my God.
A super delicious loaf for adults and children. Help furnish your daily supply of vitamins. I love finding these old ads for stuff that if they were around, I so would buy it. Like I found an old commercial for Superman peanut butter and sent it to James the other day. And I'm like, man, if there was still Superman peanut butter, I don't even care if it tasted disgusting. That's the peanut butter that I would buy just because. Like, just because I got Superman peanut butter.
Like one on the shelf, just sealed forever.
Like, Dad, this is like eating pastes and cardboard. Yep, it's Superman peanut butter. And then the last little thing I have that's funny. Last weekend I got bored, and I wanted to make my wife laugh, and I had an epiphany. Case, are you a fan of the musical Wicked?
Yes, I am.
All right, I will send you the link, my friend. I got bored and basically took parts of Defying Gravity and edited it with the first flight scene from Man of Steel.
Oh, great. I love that idea.
And my wife was chuckling so hard because of how well I got it to sync up and everything. And she loved it. I'm going to send it to you now. But if anybody hears this and is interested, I'll send you the link. It's in my Google Drive. I just didn't know if I could put it on YouTube because I don't own the rights to anything, but it was just a fun little experiment I did, and it makes me smile.
I'm going to be honest. I have thought about how I could combine Superman with Defying Gravity. So I'm really glad that you did that. Like we were on the same wavelength is what I'm getting at.
Me and Jamie had a great time watching it.
I was like, I had the idea, but I didn't know exactly which. And then I was like, oh, the Man of Steel scene's perfect for it. So enjoy that. Now, to get on with today's topics. With this episode of the podcast, we are jumping back into our ongoing comic reading of the Joe Kelly, Jeff Loeb era of DC Comics. Now, we had talked about how we're kind of coming in and out of a triangle era because, last week, the comics that are last month that we went over, the covers all made like a not one picture, but they all looked in relation to each other. And this month they are all completely different, but there is a couple of times where they reference events in the other books. And one thing we discovered last time was that each one of these titles was designed to be a jumping on point for the character. So, and what's interesting is Superman, The Adventures of Superman, and Superman Man of Steel all have triangle numbers on them, but Superman in Action Comics doesn't. I found that a little fascinating.
No, the Action Comics one has the triangle. It's just like in a weird spot.
It's on
like,
the bottom left a
yeah.
little bit. It's kind of cut off there. It's underneath her leg.
Well, then I chopped it and cropped it off when
it's
I
in a
did my
very weird
picture.
spot. Like, just for the record, I thank you for starting with this because this is a thing that I contemplate a lot when I think about the Jeff Loeb era, because it like, is it the triangle era or is it a new launching point for the series? And I would say that it holds on to some of the elements that are iconic to the triangle era. It has the triangle elements indicating like the issue numbers, obviously. So like you would say if that is your one criteria, then it is by definition, yes, part of the triangle era. But I would say that it is the difference of like the birds from the dinosaurs, or like it's an evolution of the triangle era that was intended to be a relaunch point. And so, yes, thank you for bringing this up because this all four of these issues, while there is an interconnected continuity between them all, they all are intended to be, here's a fully independent story, and it's a lot of fun in that regard.
It is, and it's just interesting because we were having this conversation last time because I consider this is where they were trying to do the triangle era basically again, but it was fading out. It wasn't, the 4-book model of telling these connected stories. It wasn't working, and we needed to kind of go back to the each title doing its own thing, kind of, because it's I talked to Mike Carlin not too long ago, and he talked about how many comics he was editing and overseeing in a year, and keeping up that type of mass continuity and storytelling in the triangle area was difficult. So I guess we will be starting with
well, like when we were talking about last month, like the books that we read last month, we discussed how they were like written, they had a number order in a triangle, but then none of those books connected.
Yeah.
These four do have some overarching narrative or some things that connect, but I mean, besides books 1 and 4, with Mongol, and the mention of that stuff going on, I mean, it's really only the Superman married plot line that we're gonna get into, but
which I would argue is
that actually goes across.
That goes across all 4.
Yep.
Let's get into Superman number 152, cover date January of the year 2000.
man.
Who feels old?
Oh God.
Right here. I'm raising my hand. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. By all means. Who feels old is like thinking about Mongol Jr.
Yeah.
Like, Christ, like I remember when Mongol Jr. came out, and like I had such mixed feelings about the concept of Mongol Jr. because it felt like such a like fanficky kind of way of bringing Mongol back after like Mongol had been killed in like I think it was it Underworld Unleashed when Mongol died.
It feels like it, but I'm not sure. And a part of that is because this is what happens when I'm reading this current and then past for another podcast. And after a while, it just all starts to blend.
Yeah, either way, Mongol had died at this point in continuity, and there was a feeling of like, oh, but now we're without Mongol, and so lo and behold, here is Mongol Jr., who is just like Mongol. But you know what? It's a thing that is weirdly additive in that like the current like war world kind of arc of it all, with like the way it's like here's Mongol, like the Mongol who was and the Mongol who is, and like that whole like kind of structure of it. Like that's so cool. Like it was like this felt at the time like it wasn't like it felt kind of like a hack way of like reintroducing Mongol, but it has been taken and transformed into a really cool take on the character that is way more interesting than the kind of like dark side knockoff that like Mongol kind of like originated as.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those where somebody has an idea, cool, but then somebody comes along and perfects that idea. And you're like, oh yeah, now I'm digging this.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the beauty of all these characters being able to be written by so many different writers and drawn by different artists. You know, they get that chance to add something to the character that, you know, improves the longevity of that character instead of just being, like you said, a dark side knockoff from before.
Right.
You guys want to go ahead? Who wants to kind of like just summarize and talk about this issue? Anybody want to take it?
Sure. So I mean, it opens with Superman and Mongol fighting, and at first we're not entirely clear why or what the stakes are for it. And in the course of the battle, it starts to become clear that Mongol is testing Superman. And like really trying to push Superman to like fight to his like fullest extreme. And like Superman stops himself from like going too far, but like comments on like how it's like he might not have, and it indicates that they were actually sparring and that they were using the Grand Canyon as a sparring ground, because that would be obviously like a less like a spot where they could get away with that without.
Can't train in any populated areas.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then it cuts back to earlier a time, like I'm not sure if it's earlier that day or a few days before, but cuts back to the arrival of Mongol Jr., who everyone is just like, what are you doing, man? Like,
which we got at the end of the last issue of Superman.
So he is pleading with Superman, and everyone's like, no, your dad is the like one of the worst murderers of all time, and we have no reason to trust you. But he pleads with Superman not to immediately get into a fight, and they part ways. And I do really like the art. I do want to call attention to Mike McKeown's artwork here, where you can see the wedding ring in Superman's hand. And there's a nice like color embellishment to give it like a nice golden gleam. I think that's a really nice like detail there. But anyway, so basically, Mongol explains that there is another threat that is yet another dark side kind of knockoff thing that is coming and destroyed Warworld and is now on its way here, and indicates that Superman could confirm all these details with his telescopic vision, but he's choosing not to. He's like holding back his powers and needs to like push himself like way further.
It is it's interesting because, like you said, these villains, they feel like knockoffs, but it's like like if Mongol Jr. here is scared of whatever this is, how bad can it really be? Like it's a way of trying to sell us immediately that this threat that's coming is going to be more powerful. So
yeah, it's kind of like the Worf effect.
Okay, following you.
Yeah, where in Star Trek the Next Generation, Worf is supposed to be the big tough guy, security chief of the Enterprise, and so to establish physical threats when they were introduced, they would just manhandle Worf. But as a result, he was eventually relegated to being not seen as that big of a physical threat until he got to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where he never loses a fight. Because they have to like reverse that whole situation. But this is still early at that phase for Mongol Jr., who is, as far as we know, as like Mongol Jr. is like. Did you guys ever watch Beer Fest?
Yeah,
so long ago, but yeah.
But do you remember Landfill? And then when he dies, his brother Gil replaces
yes,
him?
yes.
He's just a bigger, better version of Landfill.
Right, like a version with a cowboy hat was like the difference.
Yeah.
And like that's kind of what Mongol Jr. is here. Like it's just like, yep, it's just Mongol, like, but technically not dead for our purposes.
Right.
Yay.
Well, as they do go down the line further with Mongols in more stories, they do the next in line tends to kill the
Yes, again,
Mongol that
I
was.
do really like that idea. Like the way they
So-
build on this idea, amazing. But I mean, it's like we're like what?
But how
15 years
old,
before
how
that
long?
idea like gets explored?
Yeah. Like how old and how long are these lines of Mongols,
Also
Like-
true, yes.
Do they only rule a decade and then the next one in line kills them off?
I mean, it makes you wonder if they even make it that long. Like maybe there's one that rules for a long time, and then there's one that's killed off quick. Like I am now the Mongol who.
Right.
Yeah,
I am now the Mongol who is.
And then it's like
like-
where do they rise? Where do they rise from? Are they a race of beings, or is it like that? It's Warworld, a gladiatorial place where they just have kids and survival of the fittest. Whoever rises among the ranks of just all the bastards
oh yeah, I
is the
see.
next
There's
one
so-
to
Yeah.
kill.
so
You know what
many-
I mean?
There's so many seeds of Mongol out there that like they
Yep.
can just become like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see that. That's an interesting
Like
idea. I was thinking of it
barbaric,
as a lineage.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking of like a direct lineage, but of just so many bastards.
Yep.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a very like House of the Dragon
Yep.
kind of thing right there.
He strikes me as a barbaric type of person. It almost seems like that would be kind of the way it would go,
Yeah.
I do with on page 10 or I'm sorry, 11. where
That's
we
a Black Label book right there.
yeah, it
It's
is.
just a story of Mongol. That's a Black Label book. Do that.
We have Clark walking around on the ceiling. What did you guys think of the flashback part of the story? He talks about the bully, with him and between him and Paul. Like,
Well, I mean, I like at this time, they talk about how he didn't get his powers until he was pretty much graduating high school, or at least in his last like couple of years of high school. So as a kid, he was just more of like a normal kid.
I'm not a fan of that, but It is what it is.
So, I mean, it's the time, it's the time of it, because there's always like a development of powers, and I think like him being strong at a young age, strong and fast, is a more interesting and trying story for the character. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that the power level of Clark Kent in his youth is a fluctuating line that will just change however the story requires it. Because like if you think of like the original like Byrne origin, he like survives like being trampled by like a cow, right? And like and he's like a kid. So clearly like there's like invulnerability kicking in pretty early on, or at least like some degree of durability. So like how old is he here? Is he actually not powered? Like did he have like a slightly super strong punch just there, which is how he just like broke someone's nose casually? Like I don't know, like
Yep.
he's Superman. I think at least from a young age he had an aptitude to punch.
yeah.
Nice square punch right in the nose.
I do like the upside down kiss that follows between Lois and Clark. It apes the Spider-Man kiss.
It does.
Well before.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right. It would be well before.
You would say Spider-Man took this. Now I don't know if that ever happened in a comic book. I mean, it seems ripe for a comic.
Yeah, sure.
For a Spider-Man comic, yeah. But yep, from what I can tell, they aped this.
yeah, you're right. This would be like a year and a half before. And then we get Jimmy in the dark room looking at his computer and revealing that he caught the wedding ring on this. And then he discusses that he could maybe like remove this. And it's such a funny explanation from 2000 of what Photoshop is.
Yeah. It's a great conversation of ethics, Photoshop, and I think it's in this one, or it could be in. Hold on, it's never mind. I'm gonna hold that thought because it's actually in another issue where Perry
the journalistic ethics component like appears throughout like this whole arc of it, but here Jimmy decides to remove it because it would be potentially like ruinous for like Superman's life. And I'm fascinated that Lois kind of like pushes against it.
She leaves it up to him, and I think when he ultimately does it, he decides that it could be potentially dangerous for whoever that spouse may be. So, kind of protecting Superman and his loved one in that moment, not just save Superman the hassle.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Where does everyone feel in terms of the right or wrong here?
Okay. I thought about this too. And if I'm coming from Jimmy Olsen's perspective or Lois, because Lois's perspective is different because it's her, and it's one of those things like she's putting in perspective that, oh my God, that's me. From Jimmy's point of view, it's interesting because there is no one else like Superman, and it's different. And I don't, at this point in time, one thing I think about is how they always talked about people never really thought of the secret identity because no one really believed the idea that Superman would have another identity besides just Superman.
Right.
But having this proves that he does, that he is something more than just constantly Superman. So I think to play the interesting angle, I would have taken the picture just to Perry and let Perry make the call. Like, Perry, look at this picture. What should we do?
Right.
Because I don't know if I can make that choice, because I feel that in my mind, I could argue it both ways. And I would be almost reaching a stalemate within myself.
So then here is the question, which is, outside of what should Jimmy have done, what is actually the right answer? Like, if you were Perry and he takes this to you, would you have said we leave it in, or would you have said we remove it?
Well, I'm thinking Perry would leave it in. I'm thinking that the editor in chief, it's a story. It's it is for the newspaper, and it's a credibility and integrity thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree. That's what he would
He
do.
speaks for the whole paper. Jimmy's editing it out can at least, it be a wrong angle, where it's just missed or something, but
Or use a different photo and not that one, Jimmy.
Well, they established that it's the only one that has like the right composition. It just has that one detail in it.
yeah.
I would almost run it and then try to print something that seems like, did the Daily Planet edit in a wedding ring on Superman? Like, is there really a Mrs. Superman? And I honestly can't tell you, because from a personal point of view, I wouldn't want that to be known. As if I was Superman, I wouldn't want people to know that. And I would hope that Jimmy, being my friend, would help me protect that part of me. But then, like, from a Perry point of view, is you owe the truth. You're supposed to be an unbiased paper.
Yeah.
And,
well, that's also a thing.
And here's the thing. This comic is coming at it from 2000s mentality about like what is possible in terms of like the editing the truth and so forth.
Yep.
Like this, like, God, Jesus Christ, like, God, don't even get into just like AI generation of like video. But
yeah, 24 years is what we're dealing with today.
We're starting to get to the point where we're second guessing things that we're seeing. And not to skip ahead, but there is a point where Perry, in a different issue, and we'll get there, but I think it's relevant. He says used to be a picture was the proof. And now it's not. I mean, even more, that's less and less true. You get a picture of something, it can be altered, doctored, changed. And it really asks you, what is truth? So that makes you wonder, by reporting the truth and holding the integrity with something like Superman's wedding ring, you have to be reputable to your readers.
Yeah, it's murky, ultimately. Murky like the battle that is between Superman and Mongol in the what appears to be the Marianas Trench.
Yep.
That Aquaman then sort of pops in, and I like this cameo of Aquaman because it's very much like a Jeff Loeb style writing of this era of Aquaman, just like as a pop in, being like, "You sure you're okay? All right, buddy."
Yeah, he pops in like, "What's going on? I'm here to," like, "No, we're good." And he's just like, "Huh?"
Teaching me how to increase my lung capacity
to breathe longer in space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, buddy. Okay.
Right.
You sure you're okay?
Like,
blink twice if you need help.
Sort of a valid thing. I mean, Superman has at this point already gone through the arc where he has had his power level increased enough where he could be like, where he didn't need to hold his breath, and he was able to like super oxygenate his blood This is back when he like during the what is it, massacre character arc, where he's like dealt with that before. So like in theory, he might know that he can survive without air. But one of the hallmarks of the post-crisis Superman has always been needing it, and so it is like a lot from that standpoint, like cool to see him like training to hold his breath longer.
Yeah, it is. And one of the we were talking about the issue ends where Jimmy does decide to doctor the photo, and Perry confronts Jimmy because the Daily Star has a photo of the wedding ring. Dum dum dum.
With Mrs. Superman.
So that leads us to our next issue, which is the adventures of Mrs. Superman.
Yeah, I was so happy that this issue was included in this group.
Now this character who's posing as Mrs. Superman, I feel like I was at a loss, because I'm like, I don't remember this character. Like I'm like, how far back does she go?
So Obsession, yeah. I actually did a video on her for my YouTube series on Superman Analogs. So
there you go, guys. Subscribe to Case's YouTube.
She doesn't go that far back, and apparently the power set she has does go back to like a 1950s era, like kind of like toy tie-in like superhero. But the basic power set is very similar to like a Captain Marvel Shazam style, powered by Greek gods. I'd have to double check to say which ones exactly, but we see her shoot lightning because she has like the powers of Zeus, and she's got like Mercury speed kind of abilities and all that jazz. Like it's I think it was coins. It was some kind of artifact that she had, and they only go back to its triangle era when like Stuart Immonen was like the artist on it. So like we're talking about like what, like 98, 90.
Okay, so not too far back.
Yeah, so only like 2 to 4 years before this issue.
Which is funny because it's right there in the sweet spot where I haven't got yet on either podcast. So It's just kind of funny. But I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, so it makes sense actually that this is an issue written by Immonen, because he would remember her because he was, I believe, the artist back when she was introduced.
Makes sense.
Nice.
That said, I way prefer this outfit for the character over the like green outfit that she first appeared in. This like Mrs. Superman design on a character who is just like obsessed with Superman, like that's her shtick. It looks actually pretty good. Like it feels like she's forcing kind of a sexy Superman kind of design. And I think it works for this stalker, like Superman stalker character.
Yeah. I agree. I think I like that her color scheme it's like red and blue, but it's like a blackish blue. It's not exactly like, it's not a 1-to-1 match of his.
Yeah, it's a darker shade.
And she shows up and he immediately is like, obsession, great.
Right.
And everyone's like, it's Mrs. Superman. He's like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, the issue opens with some kids, maybe teens or something, maybe young adults, buying a drug, DMN, and it actually transforms them into like demon monsters who are like robbing and rampaging across the town, across Metropolis. That Superman and Mrs. Superman, that obsession, have to fight.
That's really hardcore if you think about it.
Yeah. It's interesting the number of like super drugs that are out there in DC Comics. like I immediately was thinking about Tar, which I believe was a knockoff of Venom that
Mhm.
turned everyone into like Hulks that like showed up in like the Steel uh, issues, like the opening arc of Steel. But then
Mhm.
you've got Venom, you've got Miraclo, you know, like there's just like all kinds of just like superpower drugs. And here's apparently one
No,
that
they
turns,
turned Vertigo into a drug on the CW. So
yeah, I mean, like every superpower you could imagine probably has a drug out there, and here apparently allows you to turn someone into like an Etrigan style fucking demon.
Yep. That's what they should call it. They should call it like something E.
Sorry, I can't remember. Can I curse? I apologize.
That's you remembered a lot more of the drugs than I did. Like I was trying to remember all of them because you're right. They do keep taking and changing things, but this
not often. No, we don't usually drop the F-bomb.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
my I was looking for where is it where the guy yells his name. I feel the power of Gabriel Van Daniken.
Daniken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's Gabriel Van Daniken. Are you kidding? That's the most ridiculous name for a supervillain I've ever heard. And he goes into a whole rant like, just because I built a containment suit and tried to poison the water supply, I have to give myself a stupid alias. Get a grip, Superman. I'm 35 years old.
Right.
I was just kind of like, I would still give myself a cool name, but whatever.
Right.
It was the type of snark that I expected from a Mark Millar script.
Yeah.
Like I chuckled a bit at it, but it definitely was that like I'm too cool for your superhero kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I want to write superhero comics or talk about them, but at the same time, I don't. I want to poke fun at it too.
Yeah.
Like I'm smarter than the material kind of thing. But I do think it's a
Right.
funny joke though, where he's like just using his name. He's like, I don't care. You know, like whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so Superman is fighting this guy in this who's going by his full name, and punches him into what appears to be a Woody Woodpecker themed thing of nitrogen, to freeze him. And as he's coming out, he gets attacked, interrupted. I don't know, like it's a Chacum from from Mrs. Superman, from who is Obsession, who is this character who, like I said, appeared a couple of years earlier and has basically the power of Shazam type superpowers. But now she's in the Superman style outfit, and Superman immediately is frustrated that she's here because she is crazy. All of her appearances have been her being this like literally obsessed with Superman kind of stalker character.
I mean, this is a perfect. I'm surprised we didn't get more of this, of like people like that stereotypical person just trying to attract attention, like saying, I'm Superman's wife, you know, and has like fake photos of her with Superman, like just some woman on the street claiming to be the wife of Superman.
Wasn't that a plot line in Lois and Clark?
Yeah. So.
And after we Chacum Gabriel, we never see him again in this issue.
Yeah, I'm like flipping back and forth on this issue, and I'm like,
she
what?
Obliterated him.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I was hoping that he'd pop back up, but nope.
Nope, doesn't show back up.
Yeah, so I wish I could say with better certainty what happens to him, but all I can say is he gets Chacumed.
I'll tell you,
right.
the part in this that I had completely forgot about was about Lucy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so oh god.
Lucy and Ron.
Yeah. So the fact that it's like a big concern that it's like an interracial child that they're having together out of wedlock is on the one hand it's a very mature storyline. On another hand, it's like, ooh, that's
And this is 2000. Like,
yeah,
that's it. That's not.
Yeah, you're like. On one hand, it's a mature storyline for the past. Is it?
right. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the fact that it's 2000. You're like, are you sure it wasn't from 1985?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, like it feels like it should be a lot older than that.
And then you're like reading it now. You're like, oh, that's an issue.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Exactly. Where you're like,
Yeah.
I'm glad they're doing something that feels like a progressive story, but the problem is it doesn't feel like it's frustrating that it was progressive in 2000 if it was in fact progressive, or at least like it felt like it had to be progressive in that way. Like it.
Well,
I just want the world
it
to
was
be better.
mostly about their father. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. The a better tomorrow. But yeah, I mean they are talking about their father, so it's an older generation.
it's true. It's true.
Anyway, so it continues where we sort of catch up with what is going on with Ron Troop. And we establish that whatever is going on is up by the mission that Troop is working at. So he heads up there. Meanwhile, Lois heads up there also, and these like demon drug addicts are like attacking.
I like that. Demon drug addicts.
Yeah, like what? How? But we get some action shots of Superman being chased by Obsession, and just sort of a reminder of like her like magical lightning powers and so forth. And he convinces her because she's fundamentally not a bad person. She's just like obsessed with Superman to the point of it being a major problem, not a little problem, like a major problem with the character. But she
What's funny is
sorry, go on.
I was saying it's funny just from the perspective is because everybody on the ground is like, that's Mrs. Superman, and she is, who are you married to, and she's attacking him for it.
Yes, yeah, like for people who are confused about the situation. Yeah. But anyway, so they do ultimately team up against these DMN druggy characters, and she takes an attack which is like the actual wound is off camera, and as a result I'm not entirely clear what happens. Like it looks like what the demon goes to like slash, but then there's like electric stuff going on, and maybe that's electric stuff going on from her, but either way, she takes a mortal blow at this point and actually dies. This is the death of the character. When she appears again, she is in the afterlife. In passing references there. So weird send off for this character.
Very, very weird. Because, it's weird because I had to read it twice because he's holding her and she says, do I really have to spell it out the rest? Well, then we see Superman and the people. Then he takes his cape off and we see him flying away with the drug demons,
Yeah.
And then it cuts back and there's one of them on the ground and her. And, we have the line about pointless death, and it's just like, oh, okay, so she's dead. Like it feels weird, almost anticlimactic.
Yeah, it. I wonder if
well, this is I think this is the mysterious character from the beginning, the selling the drugs, and then his eyes are glowing in the alley.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense for the character there. But I think in terms of the issue, this gets into it being a a a plotted by Stuart Immonen, who is mostly known as a penciler, and then scripted by Mark Millar, who say what you will about Mark Millar, but like I would say like at least like knows how to like structure like the beats of a story. I think this one is it kind of feels Marvel method where it was like Immonen like sort of paced at or like explained how he wanted the issue to go, but like I don't know. It just feels like I'm trying not to be insulting to someone who is like a true like an incredible talent in this all. But it just feels like it's a script that was written by someone who's more of a penciler than a scriptwriter.
Mm-hmm. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You know, it's just yeah. Sometimes when artists write scripts or write their stories, there's something missing. Like they have a good idea, but they just don't bring the story home. And
Right.
Yeah, it's just an inability to communicate it because the way they communicate it is artistically, as opposed to like in the script format. And so there's just a lot of like things that seem to happen off camera or in like weird logical jumps throughout this whole thing. And yeah, ultimately the figure presumably from the beginning sort of like shows up and kind of like teleports away the corpses of the demon druggy and obsession.
All right, Phyllis.
Calls them an appetizer.
That's not scary at all.
Mm-hmm. It's a little ominous.
All right, we're gonna move on to From Krypton with Death, Superman, the Man of Steel, number 96, which is number 3 in our triangles. Now, this issue, I will say real quick that the Superman story of this issue, not really a fan of.
I'm also in agreement with this one, and part of this is that like what is it, Torque Vow or whatever it is, like the Kryptonian martial art. I have never been a fan of as a concept.
I am so tired of like anything to do with the Eradicator right now. That just whatever Superman's doing, like I like his little conversation with Steel, but everything else with him, I could care less. To me, this issue works with the Perry and Jimmy, because this was the one where Perry confronts Jimmy about the picture, and he has the line. Where is it? A photograph used to be the ultimate guarantee of the truth, but now with all these newfangled digital capabilities, Olsen, you've been granted a great power. Just don't blow it, kid. Because right there's the truth, man. Like, you get a photo like we were talking about, and that was it. And now we're at a point where you look at an image and you're like, is it a filter? Is it a Photoshop? Is it AI? You know, what all's been done to it? Like, is it deep faked? You know, it's like, I don't know if it's real anymore. It's so easy. It messes with our eyes. But
yeah,
the only stuff in this issue that I really do like is the Justice League press conference and the Jimmy Olsen and Perry stuff.
Yeah, I do like how the Justice League says we are all married and everybody's got a ring on their hand.
Yep, to the Justice League. And it's, Plastic Man,
Walter
Martian
West is there.
Yeah. Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, Kyle, Green Lantern, Steel, and Aquaman. And I think that was a pretty smooth move by them all presenting themselves with with having wedding rings.
Wedding rings, yeah. It's like they're communication devices, we swear.
Mhm.
Communication and GPS. We got you all locked down.
Yeah, and they note that it's weird that Superman's not there, and that's because he's like currently in like a combination battle of like psychic armors with just just a regular psychic fight. Like we're just like cutting to shots of them thinking at each other.
Yeah.
Which is just weird for Superman. Like Torgasm Vow or whatever it is, like is not by itself like a concept that like is alien to a character like Superman. It just feels weird for like Superman.
Yeah. Oh no, I get it. Like if it was one of those where we have the battle of the mind while there's also the battle of the body doing something, or there's like somebody battling something to protect Superman's body while he's battling in the mind. And it's just like Lois walks in the apartment and we learn that she picked up an artifact when they were at the fortress, and then Superman heat visions it and ends the battle.
Which was such a casual item to just have. And it's like, and this is how the Eradicator comes, or sort of the Eradicator, Kim L, the creator of the Eradicator, is just able to just like casually take over your space and like threaten you, because they're just this artifact just happened to come back.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just one of those. I'm just like, I did not like it. I did not enjoy it, and I feel like this issue would have been a complete waste had it not had the other stuff in it. And then the next issue I'm really not looking forward to because it's called Eradication, and it deals with the Eradicator. Like I said, I am just so tired of the Eradicator.
Yeah, the cover for the next issue is very much an Eradication focused story, and this is the issue that like kind of makes it feel the most like a Triangle era one, mostly because the Eradicator.
Yep.
And referencing Kim L and all that. But I agree. I don't really like the story. I just Superman as a psychic character, again, works for characters who are Superman like, but for Superman proper, it just doesn't quite feel right.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, boys, let's get to the last issue, Superman in Action Comics, which this is a ride, my friends. This is
I mean, just
else.
one thing before we move on. I mean, once in a while, I mean, he's got to be a well-rounded hero. You know, once in a while, he's got to take on something he's not. That's not normal for him. So
I just think like it's weird for him to be so good in that. Like I think him stumbling his way through it would be one thing, but him being like a competent psychic fighter or like psychic armor fighter.
Even at all, I mean, he probably gets a little practice with Jean, but it's on his playing field, you know?
Yeah, it just it just feels like such a stealth like uber buff, because it feels
they do talk about psychic blocks and right. They do talk about like the characters having like psychic blocks and things like that they've instilled or erected, things like that. So I mean, it's plausible that they have a little bit. I don't think he should be proficient in it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, it just kind of feels clunky.
I think once again, there's a way to do this kind of story idea, but this isn't the way I would do it.
Right.
Like I think I'd find a different way to present this kind of battling of the minds. So, but let's get into this final issue. Superman in Action Comics 761, featuring Wonder Woman, also known as James's lover.
This
I,
is
I picked
another
on him.
issue I was really glad was in the group that we were looking at today. Like this is such a great assembly of issues overall. Um, I I remember when this issue came out, but like I can't remember if I bought it or if I just read it, but it was so commonly referenced on like message boards and stuff. The overall arc of this issue, that I was just happy to revisit it.
I love the way this issue starts because it's like we just are working on trying to get down the who is Mrs. Superman, and there's Lois and Clark together, and Lois is like goofing and playing around, and then she hears the knock at the glass and turns, and then there's Wonder Woman sitting there,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
just like, oh crap, you know. And Lois kind of, the idea, like I always think it's interesting, this Lois looking at herself, like when she sees Clark kind of as more than just Clark, when she sees more of the super aspect, the almost godlike portion of him, where she's like, I'm an Amazon princess. Mind if I borrow your husband? I need someone to polish my tiara. And then you can kind of see how she puts herself down without really, uh, like just in the look and everything of how she's feeling about herself. But I do like, as this goes, where you see more of the strong friendship between Lois and Clark, or not Lois, sorry, Diana and Clark.
Clark, yeah.
I really like that strong friendship that they have cultivated. But it's the one thing about this issue that kind of it chuckles me, and I don't know if you guys feel the same, but for me, like I'm very accustomed to like with DC being in the realm of the Greek pantheon and being okay with everything. And then on the flip side with Marvel, I'm okay with being, connected to the Norse pantheons. But then when like Hercules shows up in Marvel, I don't know, it just bothers me. Or here when Thor shows up, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me, or just feels weird. How you guys feel? Like with the mythological people.
So there is a precedent for stories like this. There was the whole thing with like the JSA being trapped for a period of time, like living out Ragnarok for like something like basically the same story. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s, for when they were like trying to figure out like what to do with the JSA for a stretch of time. So like the Norse pantheon has been around the DC universe, but I agree, it does feel weird. It does feel like it's treading on Marvel's toes. In it, I mean, I like Hercules and Marvel. I feel is like established enough that it's a little bit different. Although I do personally prefer to just like have the Eternals be the.
Yep, me too.
Yep, but that's getting into a much weirder area. So I'm getting what you're putting down. I think that they canonically exist in the DC universe, and so having a story that is just a micro story, like a bottle episode of a story, where like all of it happens in this one issue, and like it has to deal with the pantheon that has like a cyclical nature, like they work fine for that purpose. And like I said, like they canonically exist in DC. But I get what you're saying, that it feels weird having it be like a Superman like wielding Mjolnir like in the DC universe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things, like one group has very much embraced and elevated it into its DNA to the layman, like Wonder Woman's Greek goddess and all that.
Yeah.
and then Thor, of Asgard. But that when you do touch on one of the others, it just kind of feels odd. But I understand exactly where you're coming from and saying like, yeah, if you're a comics reader and you've been around and that's what you're focused on, it makes better sense than if you are just the person. It's like in All-Star when Superman goes up against Hercules and Samson.
Yeah, and they just like kind of show up and like
It's just kind of like, okay. Like, I know Samson was a strong man from the Bible, but he wasn't like fighting fighting Superman level of strong. Jeez. But
yeah. No, I mean that's totally fair, and like Wonder Woman primes you for a Greek god story. Like when she shows up, that's what you think is the pantheon that you would be dealing with. So it's like weird that it is a Norse pantheon that it then is the driving thing here.
so,
but I do enjoy, like I enjoy this, like the sequence of like Lois like looking in the mirror and like comparing her to Wonder Woman. Like, we made the joke about the polish that my tiara kind of bit. Like I like it. Her jealousy is sort of a fun dynamic to sort of play around with.
mhm.
The concept that we're just gonna put Superman and Wonder Woman in an endless Ragnarok cycle and just spend an issue of them having effectively infinite time spent at war. It kind of makes me think of the Inner Light episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I'm sorry to reference Star Trek again
You're
on
fine.
this one, but where like Picard like lives an entire life inside like one inside his head, and like Superman like lives like 1,000 years or something like that, or like 100 years, like
Just to throw it over to my pal James here. It's like that episode in season 5 of Supernatural where puts Sam in the loop and he has to watch Dean die over and over every day. He can't figure out how to get out of it. He lives for like so many years until one day they put him back on normal with, waking up to no more Asia. And he tells him how many times and how long he lived watching Dean die.
I like that episode though.
It is a great episode.
Well, so anyway, so we have them go through 1,000 years of war against demons. Meanwhile, we have Jimmy not being a supportive. The Jimmy here is different than the Jimmy of other issues in terms of his like support of the like Lois Lane or of like the Mrs. Superman situation and like his like his sensitivity to everyone's feelings about it all. But yeah, like the A plot of Superman and Wonder Woman just like fighting demons for 1,000 years is like kind of fun, and it's like a fun way of just sort of saying like, yeah, these two really care about each other and are awesome at what they do, and like eventually like team up in like really cool ways, and eventually Superman is like flying around with Mjolnir, and it's some cool looking shots of him being a badass there. But it's ultimately like not a major storyline. Like I said, it's a bottle episode. It's there just to establish how they feel about this all, and then meanwhile Lois has this whole plot about her like feeling like really insecure about her relationship with Superman, and then it reunites them, and Superman stayed faithful over 1,000 years. Meanwhile, like Lois has dealt with her anxiety and insecurity, and they're back together, and it's really romantic and beautiful.
And it touches on where she's hiding her secret from Clark. So, and see, point taken about my daughter just randomly showing up. You know about the bargain that she did and everything to get the planet back from Lex Luthor that she's keeping hidden, and how she's dealing with that. So that's nice. And wait, am I skipping ahead? Yeah, I'm tired, boys. Yeah, there it is. You were okay. Whether or not I deserve to be your wife. I can't talk anymore. And then he swoops in and takes her.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. The letter she wrote, she dropped and it blew away.
But the timing is it's so quick. Like he could have, got that letter, found that letter, and maybe he does. I don't know. You don't know. Case probably knows because but James and I haven't got there.
I will have to reread this era. This was a lot of fun to dive back into this period of comics. I was reading these very actively at the time, but I feel like the Loeb books sort of like took the spotlight at this era.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And that was part of why, like, when we were trying to figure out what to do in comics, and do something a little bit different, part of it was trying to find an era that neither of us were really super versed in. And also because of what you said, like, you have a really good all writers on all sides, but this era, the early 2000s, people always think of Loeb.
Yeah.
And so we decided to do it the way that we're doing, to approach, because Mark Millar on his own is a pretty prominent comic book writer creator.
Yeah, and he's done some really good Superman stuff. Like, Red Sun aside, like, everyone talks about his run on the Superman Adventures as just really fantastic Superman books, and this is an era for him. We got Joe Kelly over on Action Comics. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we we're approaching Joe Kelly. We talked about him, where James and I had recently rewatched Superman versus the Elite. So it's an interesting time, and I'm excited to be exploring it. But
yeah, you're definitely building towards that era, and it's like it was a cool relaunch point for Superman books that had I don't want to say gone stale, but they certainly needed a shakeup of some kind after after Electric Blue Superman, and after pulling back into sort of a more traditional Superman form, and doing the stories that they could with initially with like Superman and Lois being married and so forth. Like they had tested a lot of the story possibilities, and a creative team shakeup was just kind of due for the books. And so that was what the Loeb era was representative of. Now, were there other possible creative teams that could have come in play? Yes, I have some of those plans leaked online, and they're certainly really interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Like the Wade, Morrison, Millar.
Yep. Pitch.
I feel so bad because I always forget the fourth writer on this one, and it's Pyre. Tom Pyre. They would have done this really elaborate sort of relaunch of the Superman books, and instead they went with this sort of softer era with Loeb and McGinnis doing what was a real revitalization for the character.
It's a time frame, and one thing that James and I have talked about is, no matter what, DC has never done a hard reboot. They've always kind of done these soft reboot tweaks, and even when they try to say, "Oh, we've done this," like even Man of Steel, as you read that, there's references, and we get into references of the past. tweak it along the way. They cannot do a hard reboot
Oh
on
yeah, don't get me started on
characters.
like all of they because it's always like the Batman books are always doing well, and so they don't change any of the Batman stuff, and thus like some of the continuity can't change in that regard. Like the Green
Mhm.
Lantern books always are like spared the continuity changes, even though the Guardians of the Universe were the creators of the multiverse, and thus the Crisis on Infinite Earths should have had drastic ramifications on the Green Lantern Corps, and yet it didn't.
And then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do this omniverse thing, so everything everywhere matters." And one of my biggest complaints about stuff is once you start introducing the idea of multiverses and things like that, it weakens your continuity in your story because you can just always, oh, that happened on another Earth, or that's another version. It doesn't matter anymore. Nothing really has the weight of the continual development of a single character's life and story before your eyes and the trials they go through. So,
Well, I don't know about necessarily the multiverse by itself removing that scenario, because I think like the original DC multiverse had the value of like Earth 1 Superman was Earth 1 Superman, and Earth 2
mhm.
Superman was like very distinctly a different character. Um I always thought that like they could have moved on to a new Earth as being like the focal point of their stories, and just like allowed that to develop, but like kept the old Earth out there available for everything. And then that way you could have had like the same thing that happened with like the Infinity Inc. and so forth, where you're allowing that world to age a little bit. They could have allowed like the 60s DC Earth to age a little bit, and then like also started a new Earth simultaneously. And then you still would allow for the stakes of those characters, like the Catwoman of Earth 2 dies, and that's why Huntress became a character. Like, like there's stakes in those characters existing that could still exist, based around like it it's still distinctly like the version of from this continuity, and from this like Earth. um
No, I get what you're saying,
yeah.
but it's just something you see like in movies and in TV shows where they just want to keep changing things, and you're like, okay, but all right. Uh,
Yeah,
let's.
the soft reboots like don't work for me. Like it get I mean, on the one hand, like I get sort of like I remember being overwhelmed in the post crisis era, where they were constantly trying to prove that they were uh that the reboots that occurred, and that like they had to explain everything, like the fact that we had to explain the fact that like Black Canary was one of the founding members of the JLA, like
Mhm.
and that we had to like go into great detail about that. Like, all well and good. Some good stories came out of it. JLA Year One is great, but it was a lot of work that people put into it and didn't necessarily need to. But on the other hand, they also fumbled the ball on a lot of that reset stuff, and continue to do so every time they try.
Amen. Well, Case, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Thank you for having me on. These were great to talk about.
where can
Yeah,
people
it's a
find
fun
you?
chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
plug your
So
podcast.
these days, as far as social media goes, I'm directing most people to the Blue Ski. Uh, so you can find me at Case Aiken. I think what is it, bsky.social or whatever the
Yeah,
Blue Sky thing is. So that's for social media purposes. So that's the option there. As far as if you enjoyed listening to me talk about Superman stuff, I have my own Superman podcast, which is called Men of Steel, which you can find at certainpov.com. I also have a movie show that is on the same network called Another Pass, where we talk about movies that we find fascinating but flawed, and discuss what could have been done at the time of production to make a better movie. And so those are my two main things. And then both of those shows are on the YouTube channel for the Certain POV Podcast Network, which is Certain POV Media on YouTube. And so those podcasts, as well as videos that I work on, both for Superman stuff and for D&D stuff and other stuff, are up on there. So that's all the things you can find me working on.
awesome. I just had to go double check while we were sitting here talking. Shut up, YouTube ad. I had to go double check because you follow people, and then you're like, wait, am I following you on Blue Sky yet? Because you're trying to keep up with people, but then You don't. So yeah, I just went and followed you on Blue Sky.
Oh, nice. Yeah, the social media the X is just does not feel like grounds that I want to be on these days. And so
I'm trying to filter us off there. It's just there's it's always I'm trying to.
It was so important. It's so frustrating because Twitter was for all of the problems of Twitter, it was the closest that we have ever gotten to figuring out electronic telepathy.
Yeah.
It was the best solution that we had come up with in terms of just being able to just shout your thoughts into the universe and also direct message people.
It was
right.
And we're trying to find a way to make that better. But until next time, my fellow super people, remember.
Look up in the sky!
Thank you for checking out the Krypton Report. Please click our link tree in the show notes to follow us on your favorite social media platform. We have a $1 Patreon, just $1 a month to keep us going. And in return, you get exclusive shows and specials. If you want to join us on an episode, send us an email or a message.